Hello everyone, Freeman here. Welcome to another episode here on my channel. This must be around about the third time I'm doing re-recordings of this entire story, because for some reason they all end up at like 40 minutes long, and I don't want to have to make other 40-minute videos because it doesn't need to be. So I'm going to try and be more short and concise in this one, and the length of the video will hopefully reflect that. So today I wanted to tell you guys a little bit of a story of my D&D past. And this time I wanted to tell you all a D&D horror story. My one and only D&D horror story. And the picture that I shared in the community section is indeed related. Let's get into it. So, this was around about the start of this year. And around that time I was talking to a few friends about D&D, and I was like, I really want to get back into D&D. I want to make characters, I want to play the game, it's so fun, but it has been so long. And that's when my friend picked up on that and was like, hey, I actually am part of a campaign right now that's being played in your town, and if you'd like, you can probably join in. I'll just ask the DM if that's fine, and probably will be cool. And I was super hyped, and the DM got asked, and it was all fine. So I was like, alright, sweet, I'm gonna be playing D&D again. And the first session would come that Saturday. So, Saturday comes, and we're about to meet up with them. And I've never met most of these people. The only one that I knew from that campaign was two of my friends, one of which was never really there, and the other one was the guy who invited me. And we were ultimately, most of the time, 4 people. Oh, well, 5 players in total and 1 DM. So we were gonna be ensured to have a pretty good time. This campaign that we played only lasted for about 3 sessions, and the reason why is because the guy who hosted the session had to move. He was moving to a new town. So when we were getting into it and all that jazz, we just decided that we'll play for as long as we can. We'll see where we end up, essentially. So 3 sessions what we had to go on, and 3 sessions was all I needed to realize this was going to be strange. But not because of, the DM or something like that. It was actually one of the players. Now, in total, we were around about 4 players that was consistently there. There was more players that was in the campaign, but they weren't there as often, so they're not important. The 4 players that are important, though, are the ones that are going to be talked about in this story, with an exception of the DM, because he wasn't a player. These 4 players are me, a druid. No, it's not Eskil Kovac. It's actually a Luddite druid who has not seen any form of technology ever, and the most modern technology he has seen is the horse and cart. So modern plumbing is quite unimaginable for him. He is an interesting character, but he's a good guy. Then we have Gex. Gex is a monk, well, tiefling. He's supposed to be a tiefling, but he's actually a frog. The reason why he's a frog is because the tiefling in question that he once was transmuted his memories and personality and ability to speak onto the frog. Because that was the only thing he found nearby when he was being hunted down by God knows what. And he transmuted all of that into the frog and then kind of just disappeared from existence. The frog has thus far then been able to reclaim some of that information and memory about who he was and why he was and how to restore it, which was a way to explain in a more natural way of how he levels up, progression and things like that. Then there was Thordak. Thordak was essentially a barbarian. He was a barbarian. He was a totem warrior, if I remember correctly. And even if that's not correct, that's not what matters. What matters is he was a barbarian. He could get up to 4 attacks per fucking round. It was downright insane, but hey, he was both tank and DPS. We don't complain. So then we also have the last character, Wargen Keen, the communist noble cleric. You're starting to see who this story is going to be about, don't you? So the first session started, and the first session, everything considered, went pretty damn well. Nothing special. We were introduced to each other and had a good time in the tavern, and everything considered, it was pretty good. The only thing that I noted out that was communist about the guy was one conversation he had with his mother in the top spire. He was a noble, and he was a noble son of one of the rulers of the capital city in the region, named Trispire. And here is where the interesting part comes in. because, like I said, the first session didn't know out too much that he was a communist, but the lore to his character was pretty interesting, in the sense that he was apparently a pampered noble who had been living his entire life surrounded by cushions and good food. And one day he wanted to make sure that everyone had this, so he started to argue for communism, essentially, and socialism, and wanted to try and make it as socialist as possible in society. Although he wasn't given any real position to do this, and his mother primarily just like, yeah, whatever, kind of dismissed him as, he's having a face. It's gonna pass. I don't know if it ever did. But hey, going into it though, it was an interesting idea as a comedy relief character, because that's kind of what I thought it would be. A little bit of funny, haha stuff here and there, and potential character development later. See what it could grow into. Now, the thing is, first session, like I said, it was good. No problem whatsoever. So we ended it and had a good time. And I felt pretty comfortable about this group, and I really liked the DM. So we were going to have ourselves a very good time, I thought. Then came session 2, and things started to get weird. Session 2 was originally not that strange. We were supposed to go to a town in question, but got intercepted on the way by fleeing refugees. And it turned out that the town that was nearby us, not the one we were going to, but still a town nearby, was being attacked. Attacked by undead. So we marched into the town, dealt with the undead, and then when we were on our merry way back to the capital city of Trispire, because we wanted to deliver this news instead, because it seemed far more important, we came back and the refugees had already made it to the gate. And Wargen, being the bright sprite that he was, decided to run up to the guards and was like, "What are you doing? Why don't you open these gates for the people?" And was like, "Well, we're gonna open the gates for them. They just need to be checked first so we can make sure that there's no form of taint on them. We have to make sure that there's no necromantic taint on them so that this doesn't spread throughout the city if it happens that they have it." To which Wargen just went, yeah, no, not really working out. The soldier was like, "Okay, I'm sorry, sir, but I already have my orders from up above. This is what we're gonna do now." And they continue to argue against one another and whatnot. And he also, I think he was even trying to err on the ways of social justice to try and make it so that they could come in. It sounded misplaced and it was kind of strange. But my character, who was like, "I don't even know what the fuck half of the words you're saying are, so I'm gonna try and help these people." And he had at least gathered that, yeah, they're not gonna get into the city. So, my character helped the people outside to build huts. And seeing as mine was a Luddite and lived pretty much in huts and came from a tribe that knew how to build huts pretty damn well, used my magic, used my skills, we built fairly sturdy huts and a fair few of them so that the people in question had somewhere to be. And after about half a day of work, we got enough houses that everyone could have somewhere to live, even though one or two families had to live together. It still, worked out pretty fine. And Howell was pretty happy with this, so he was like, "Right, okay, but we gotta get them in though," to which the soldier was like, yeah, whatever, just get in. And the noble in question went in to the town, and the rest of us too, and we went up to the top of the Trispire, where he was trying to beg his mother to like, "Can we open the gates, Mom? I mean, they haven't been checked yet, but come on, can we do it?" And it's like, "No, they have to be checked first. We must make sure that we're not spreading something we don't want inside these walls, be it a necromantic sickness we don't have the cure for, or something else." And I was like, "But Mom, it's social injustice!" And the conversation was a little bit funny, but he didn't seem to know fully when to stop, so it was a joke that went on for a bit too long for comfort. Now, the thing was, though, when we were moving back from the town, we were moving back to our house. We had a sort of group house, one of those home hubs, I suppose you can say. And we had been assigned this home for the moment, with 3 servants. A young boy, a young girl, and an older girl, who essentially oversaw the 2 younger servants. But this is when something strange happened. Before we went home, Thordak noticed that there was a pig farm right next to them, or farm, it was more like a pig transport. And Howl got an idea. And the idea that he got was, let's buy 2 pigs. Everyone was like, the fuck? So he bought 2 pigs and brought with them home. He said that, oh, we're going to raise these pigs and we're going to start a pig farm of our very own and we'll teach the people how to do it too. What? We were just being fucking dumbfounded by this idea. Essentially what he wanted was like, oh, we'll buy these pigs and then we'll get the council to give each and every person in town their own couple of pigs, 1 male and 1 female, so that they can reproduce in their backyard and have a pigsty so that they can handle their own food production, so that they are the masters of their own production. This was very fucking strange, but we were just like, okay, we'll look at this later, what the hell? And he was very happy with this idea. So when he came back to his house and met with the servants, it was like, hi, how good are you guys at handling pigs? And we get even more dumbfounded. And we were just as dumbfounded as they were. Because the servants were like, we know basic routines, I suppose. And the thing was that he wasn't going to be the one to take care of the pigs. He was going to make them take care of the pigs. His servants were going to take care of the pigs whilst they were gone adventuring. Whilst we were gone adventuring. And they were fucking supposed to take care of them. The pigs were to be taken care of by the servants. Not Wargen. The servants. Very unsocialist of you, dude. The hell? Aren't you supposed to be able to be, you know, the man of your own fate? You're supposed to be able to work communally to fix this? Yeah, you work together? Clearly not. But his idea was that you guys do the hard work and I'll go spread the good word of communism. So he set them up, he built a shoddy fucking fence and set it up to make sure that they could take care of the pigs somewhat. And then we started calculating this shit out of game and was like, okay, the session was near done and we sat down and was like, okay, how are we going to be able to take care of these pigs? Because we had, the game had some economics and we had some money to spare, but we had to make sure that this worked, you know, in accordance to the amount of money we had. And after I did some calculations, it turns out that no, we're not going to be able to make this. The pigs that we have currently, they're going to eat through our fucking savings. They alone are going to eat through our savings in 3 months. And it takes 4 months for them to give birth to pigs. So first they have to mate in the first place, get the girl impregnated, then the fucking girl pig has to give birth to the piglets, and which takes 4 months. And then when they are born, it's going to take another year, most likely, for them to grow up. So we're only losing money at this point in time, and we're gonna go bankrupt before the pigs are even born. But no, his argument for this to continue was, no, we have to do this. We are going to make it. And it's like, how? We'll go bankrupt before they're born, and that is provided if we only feed the pigs. If we're gonna feed the servants, which we have to, it's gonna be even less time. So we do not have the money. We don't have any income. We do adventuring. We do essentially freelance work. And currently we don't have a hell of a lot of work in our hands. So how the hell is this gonna go? But he said, no, with the spirit of the people, they're going to provide us with the food we require for the pigs, for everything, so that we can build this up and then inspire them and teach them how to... This was fucking stupid. So it didn't work out for him, clearly. But we got on with this fucking tangent for 25 minutes. I shit ye not. And it was such a drawn out point. Even the DM was just sitting there dumbfounded, like, what the fuck is going on? So we just kind of ended it there with like a, okay, fine, whatever, do whatever. My character wouldn't care too much anyway because he's a fucking like Luddite who doesn't use much money. So yeah, that was that. And then came the interesting little scenario that was the third session. Because if you thought that this was pretty interesting, the third session is where everything got fucking terrible. Let me tell you of the third session. The third session came the week after the last one. So, what we decided to do was to make this one a little longer. Because this would be the last session that we would play together, and we wanted to see how far we could get on this last session. So, we tried to do what we could to extend the session. And everything considered, we did manage to play for a fair bit longer. Although I kind of wish we didn't, considering what ended up happening. So the session started with us getting a new quest. We got a mail that was saying that we were to be summoned to a nearby city, where we were going to act as essentially dignitaries of Thusfar, to argue the case of getting assistance to fight off the undead hordes. So we needed to essentially ask for assistance in another town. And we just said, okay, fine, let's get going. So we picked up our stuff, we got on our merry way, and went to the town in question. It was unimpeded, so we could go there just straight up, and we did. And when we arrived to the town, things were a little bit weird. The town was not the thing we had expected, let's just put it that way. The town that we came from, Thusfar, was a pretty clean and nice place where people could make a decent living, and it was actually a pretty nice town, everything considered. But this town was everything but that. This town, when we came into it, was just covered with smog and smoke from the industry that was working here. It was a terrible place. The thick smoke just laid low all across town, and the people who lived in this lower part of town had a hard time breathing, and were also very sick. The ones who lived here and worked here were tieflings, at least the district we had just come into. As far as I remember, there were multiple districts, but I don't fully remember. And what happened though was the fact that we walked through the town and we just found this place so weird. It was nothing we had seen before. You can bet your ass that Wargen was not liking this. My character was not liking this either. And whilst he didn't like to see people going around sick, he was also very confused about all this machinery that was around, the pumping of smoke up the chimneys and whatnot. This was very strange to him. So we got to see that they were pretty sick the further in we went, and it was nothing but tieflings, at least here. Until we got towards the boulevard that essentially just led straight up to where the castle lay. So when we walked that path, however, we were interrupted by human bandits who wanted to steal our shit. So we defeated them fairly easily, with a little bit of help. Unexpected help. Because behind us came a tiefling. And he was named Dorian. Dorian was actually a very interesting character in this town because he was apparently leading a little bit of a revolution. Thus far unseen by the common eyes because, well, it was being very much so underhandedly done, but still, he was managing it, and they were planning to commit regicide. Now, the thing was, we were currently talking with him about this, and we got a pretty good understanding of what he wanted, and we were kind of on his side already, considering, yeah, the surroundings were pretty awful. Now, the thing was, though, that he did not want us to mention his name anywhere, because his name carried a lot of bad words, because, well, he wanted essentially to commit regicide. That's never a nice thing to be known by the public. Now, the thing was that we just went on our merry way up to the main castle. And this is where things got fucking stupid. We went in, and we were greeted by the council that was ruling over the town. Essentially a quorum consisting of several dignitaries, like 50 to 100 of them. And the one who'd be our mouthpiece was Howl. Howl was going to be our mouthpiece. Considering what he had just seen, wouldn't you also just bet a fiver on the fact that this motherfucker was not at all gonna start speaking about how they needed assistance in their town? No, of course not. He started speaking about how the people were suffering, and how the people who ruled over the people were currently being very, very mean. And not just very mean, they were tyrannical. How dare you? How dare you? You have made them sit in their homes every single day. They're sick and without any form of clean water. They don't have bread on their tables. They have nothing but their chains to break, but you seal them in chains every single day. How dare you? And essentially made a speech about how the people were suffering, although that's true. They did it at the hands of the people that, you know, were currently before him. And although he didn't know any person there, he didn't know any dignitaries, he didn't know any of their policies, he didn't know anything of what they wanted, or, you know, what everyone wanted, he still accused everyone in the room of being a slaver. And whilst, you know, to a certain degree he's correct, because this is happening under their noses and everyone's aware of it, he wouldn't know if they are trying to resist this. He wouldn't know if they're trying to, you know, politically fight this. He just came in and started yelling at everyone. He didn't know the situation, but yet here he stood as if though he knew everything. And he was nearly fucking kicked out until Gex drop kicked him, and I became the mouthpiece. And although no one knew me, they all stood up and listened to what I had to say, and I told them we need assistance, and even though your people are suffering, the world is suffering as a whole, because my character had a bit of a large connection to the world. He was about 2,500 years old and had seen the rise of this empire. And although he didn't tell anyone about that part in particular, he did tell them that I've seen the world and it's not looking too good. And that's when one dignitary among them stood up. A dignitary he knew and recognized. Because this person was not a dignitary to begin with. This person was actually a friend of his. This person was a person that he knew 2,500 years ago and was still alive. And they eventually arranged a meeting that they would be meeting after this meeting was done, and they decided the place and time. So by that merit, they decided that, okay, there's a hell of a lot more going on here than what we currently know. So I stepped down, and we went on our merry way, with Howl in hand still screaming at the top of lungs of how the people were being oppressed and how they have nothing but their chains to loose. So nearly tossed out and angered to shit that Howl can't keep it in his pants, we decided to go separate ways for the moment. Me and Gex went to get a tavern, whilst Thordak and Howl decided to go and check out the town, or the slums of said town. And they came across a strange building. It was essentially a huge building that within it was just a huge mining shaft going downwards. And there were essentially these tieflings that was mining in hot and terrible conditions looking for limestone or something. And by the time that they were cutting their way through, Howl and Thordak appeared.
Stop!
What do you think Howl does? He starts holding a speech to the guard. It's like, you better release these people immediately. You're holding them captive. You're holding them slaves. And it's like, yeah, but, you know, they're supposed to work. We need this for the war effort. And he was like, but you're keeping them here as slaves. And then he turns around and starts a speech where he's like, here, people of this town, come, join me, break your chains, and we shall avenge you, and we shall protest peacefully by the gates of the town, and make sure they hear our words. Sadly, though, these tieflings didn't speak common. They only spoke abyssal. But the fucking, guy didn't care. He wanted to have his speech. He got his speech. And the dean was like, no one understood a thing of what you said. And go back to work. And instead, when he doesn't look, the fucking guard comes up with a taser and just tases him. Tased Howl. He fell to the floor like, ah, fucking screaming and wanted to get up again, but he couldn't. Thordak on the other side just stood there kind of like, you kind of asked for this yourself, and felt a bit bad because he didn't know what to do at the time. Until they heard a signal. And behind the guard came some tieflings rushing in from a tunnel, starting to kill the guard and releasing the prisoners. And that's when they saw Dorian again. Dorian came up to them and was like, oh, you guys at least can act as distractions. And then wanted to walk on his merry way until Howl asked him, just, well, what's your plan? What are you going to do now that you've freed them? Oh, we're going to commit regicide. We're taking over this place. They're not going to keep us in like this anymore. And like the worst socialist the world has ever seen, Howl stands up and goes, why? Because committing such an act is not the right way. We need to do this in a socialist way. Like, Wargen was serious about this. Wargen wanted them to go out, fetch signs. Like, Dorian asked, like, entertainment, like, okay, how would you want this to go by then? Tell me. And the only thing he said was, we need to grab signs, we need to go outside of the walls, and we need to make our voices heard. They're gonna kill us, said Dorian. Because they were. They were gonna kill them. There have been these kinds of tries before. They hadn't worked. And in true communist fashion, Wargen goes, but this time! And before he could finish, he had an axe in his knee by Dorian, who was tired of his shit. And even though he was on the ground with an axe in his knee, screaming like, hey, we need social justice, like, he was still going on, and Dorian, I'm losing names now, Dorian, who wants to put another axe in his knee, didn't get the chance before Wargen was being lifted by Thordak. Thordak just like, okay, I'm just gonna take him and move away, sorry. Kind of just carried him away. Dorian let it happen because he didn't have any aggressions against that guy. He seemed like he liked him. So they moved out and got away, and that's when they wanted to go to the tavern that we were currently at, my character and Gex. So my character and Gex was at the tavern where we would meet the dignitary that I had recognized. We started talking with the dignitary, and it was some lore came up about my character, some history that had happened and all that jazz. And my quest in this world was essentially to gather certain seeds for reasons. I can go into this another time. To be replanted in the Feywild so that they could be restored. However, it did not work according to this dignitary. They could not be regrown there. So they had to be regrown in the real world. The problem with that was that if they did, things would happen that was really bad. Now, the thing was that after this was said, Dorian came in, and Dorian actually knew of this dignitary. They were actually in cahoots, and there were several other dignitaries who was willing to just have the throne overthrown because they were not fond of this shit. So Dorian and her and me got into a little bit of a discussion, and Gex, about how this was going to go about, how we could save the town without committing as few necessary deaths as possible. So it was decided that regicide would have to be it, but we didn't have to kill every single person in the room, just a select few. And Dorian would be all for this. That's when ya boy, Wargen Keen, comes through the door and is like, sup y'all? And immediately, Dorian is like, oh, for fuck's sake. So he starts listening. Howl starts listening to what our ideas were, what we're gonna do, and upon him hearing out what we're gonna do, the regicide, and although it's gonna be lesser in scale, because less people need to be killed, he still argued that, no, you can't do this, you have to do it the socialist way. Dorian was tired of this shit, like, what the fuck can we do? We're not gonna march outside the fucking walls, they're gonna shoot us to shit. Then march upside by the castle. They're gonna slaughter us before we make our way there. It's like he continued to press that they have to do this. And with every single time that Dorian shut his mouth up, the player of Wargen was getting more and more agitated. He was sitting there shaking his leg and he didn't look too happy. Something was up with him. And I don't know what. So he continues to try and argue this point, and eventually it's like he's standing up. He stood up, the player, and just started walking around the room and wanted to like have his word in, and the DM just didn't let him because, well, he was constantly aborting all the other players wanting to have their word. So then my character eventually got fed up of his shit and cast Entangle on him. He had to roll a strength check, and even the gods of the dice were on my side, because he rolled a natural 1. So he was locked. And he accepted this, but he didn't like it. And his face was red, and he seemed angry at this point, and he looked like he had no mouth and wanted to scream. So he just walked around the room continuously agitated and asked, when can I roll a strength check to get out of this entanglement? And I was like, not yet, not yet. And then eventually, after constant yapping, I was like, okay, fine, roll now. He rolled, first time, failed. Second time he rolled, a little bit later, he succeeded. And when he did, it was like, you guys don't understand, you can't do this. You can't kill them. You're doing a really bad thing. It's like, why can't we kill them? Because it's unsocialist. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake. And Dorian, who was fed up with his shit, threw another axe into his leg. It was the second leg at this point. And, like, he continued to do this. Threw daggers at him, threw axes at him, until eventually he was down at 1/4 of his health before fucking Thordak, the god and savior, comes in, and the barbarian picks this frail man up and tries to take him away. And then he wanted to roll a strength check to get out of Thordak's grip, and he managed. And he actually didn't, but he didn't use his strength. It was more like he slipped out like a snake and then started to argue like, but you can't do this, seriously. You can't go and kill people just like that. You can't kill these dignitaries. You have to do it the socialist way. We have to go out and protest peacefully. They will listen. This time it will work. And this was the point when he was being so fucking annoying that we kind of just like, alright, Thordak grabs a hold of you again and is taking you upstairs. We finished the conversation, even though he was very agitated, the player, and said that's the end of it. So the session ended. And on that sour note, it was done. We thought. Yeah, one more thing happened. Although this was out of game, this was still the player in question being very awkward. So what happened was this. The player, who had just done all of this, he was not being particularly happy. He was actually acting very strange about this, and was still erratic. And that's when our DM just said, well, it was good having you guys over. This is sadly the last session. And he came to his senses. The DM and this guy were friends, so they hugged it out and had a last talk before, the main guy, the DM, was going to essentially move away. He was going to move in a few days, and this was the last time we were going to be able to have a session. So it was pretty heartfelt goodbyes and whatnot, and that's when I got to talk to the DM. And me and the DM had talked a little bit in private about me wanting to also DM, because it seems fun and I really want to try it. So I talked about this campaign that I had an idea of how I wanted to make. He gave me some tips, gave me some ideas. Here you can make some maps and all that jazz. And it went pretty well. I was pretty happy with it. And we were going to start doing it in a little bit. So I told him, like, okay, this is how it looks like right now. You're going to be with as a player. I'm going to be DM. Then another player is going to be the friend who invited me to this campaign. And then my girlfriend. And the moment I said my girlfriend, the communist guy blares up. He lifts his fucking face from his phone and goes, girlfriend? I didn't know you have a girlfriend. And I was like, yeah, I do have a girlfriend. And I was like, huh, Well, I didn't know that you had one. Well, I do. She's cool. I like her. She's pretty cute. And the DM was chimed in. I was like, yeah, she's cool. I was like, huh, can I see that? And I was like, the fuck? But okay, alright. I mean, wouldn't do super harm, I suppose. So I showed a picture of my girlfriend, and the picture I chose was the one I have for my phone background, so he could have seen it anyway. But regardless, I showed him the picture, and he was like, oh god damn it, she is cute. Huh. And I was like, yeah. And I didn't know what to respond to that, so I just kind of kept silent as everyone was picking up their stuff and preparing. Then he asks the weirdest fucking thing. He asks, so, how does your sexual relationship look like? Everyone froze at this. Everyone looked at him and gave him the what the fuck stare. And you can imagine how I fucking felt when he asked that. I was like, why do you ask that? And then he said, like, well, I mean, if you ever have been thinking about, you know, having a third person or something to be involved with it, you know, you can always ask. I can fill any role. And this was happening. He was trying to have me accept him in a threesome with me and my girlfriend. Everyone was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I just stood there frozen like, no, that's not gonna happen. And he was like, well, are you sure? You know, you if you maybe find someone, you could very much well and ever had the thoughts of doing it, you know, could you tell someone about it? And that's when I just decided to fuck with him a little bit. So I was like, yeah, I mean, well, we have been thinking a little bit about having, you know, a threesome. And then he chimed up and looked so happy for a second. Until I said, yeah, because we've got this girl that we have been talking to who we think is going to be a good fit. And his fucking smile disappeared and was like, no, don't mind that. I mean, if it is that kind of role you need, I can fill any role. Like I said, I am flexible, you can say. And I was just being disgusted by him trying, and I was just, no, fuck off. And it's like, are you sure? I mean, you got a good girlfriend. Maybe she would also be into it too. And that's when the DM himself interrupted. And I was like, they're not gonna fuck you. And he kind of stopped. The thing is, me and the communist guy, we're not friends. I don't know him. He's someone I play D&D with who comes up every once in a while. But the DM and him were friends. So when he told him to stop, he did. And I felt nothing short of just uncomfortable. Even my fucking DM's girlfriend, who was playing Thordak, was like, what the fuck? And looking up. And when he stopped his shit, he just went back to hugging my DM. I was like, oh, I'm gonna miss you, bro. And that's when I just slipped down. I was like, alright, I think I'm gonna get going. I'll see you guys. And I kind of just slipped away and walked out. And I sat in the car for a second. I was like, what the fuck just happened? Did that just happen? And I went on my merry way home. And as I was going home, like, even though I lived 5 minutes away, I called my girlfriend and was like, hi sweetie, how are you doing? And she was like, oh, I'm good. How was the session? You won't believe what happened. And I told her what happened. When I started telling her, she thought it would be some redneck that would be like, oh, girls can't play D&D. But no, it was a fucking communist who wanted to fucking share my girlfriend in a threesome. You can't make this shit up. I wish I had the talent to make this shit up. He fucking wanted to have sex with me and my girlfriend. This was I don't know how to word it. It was terrible. And I am happy that never happened again. And a few weeks after that, when I was talking to the old DM about, you know, we were going to start doing this session, that we were going to start doing my sessions, I just asked him, what was wrong with that guy? And he was like, well, what are you talking about? Because he didn't remember. So I told him. And I was like, he did that? And And I just asked him, is he that deranged of a communist or social justice warrior that he would do that? And that's when he was like, I don't think so. As far as I know, he's right-leaning. And that's when I became a little bit more confused. Because the thing is, then some things clicked, but more questions appeared. Because the thing was that, okay, he was a right-wing, apparently, who wanted to play a far left-wing character for the sake of parody. He wanted to do like a comedy relief character. And I can dig that. Regardless of what, it can be funny. But the thing was, he was just being very uncomfortable with it. He was being very uncomfortable with it, and he was doing it very poorly, because he didn't get any character development. Every other character had some form of development over the course of those 3 sessions. Because things happen. And even though things happened to him, he didn't change. He just kept being stupid. And he intentionally wanted it so that nobody liked him, but on the same time, he was also acting really strange because he was so agitated about the fact that he couldn't have his piece and speak and do what he wanted to do. I don't know if his entire idea and shtick was to, make it worse, but it was so fucking strange. And then when he asked that question out of game about wanting to have a threesome with me and my girlfriend, a person he doesn't know, like, he's never seen my girlfriend. She's never been to any of these sessions, and he has met me like 3 times. I don't fucking know. The conclusion that we came to, or that my DM came to, was that he might not be very good at handling his liquor, which would be strange considering the fact that he had been drinking a fair few amount of times before and never spurred out like that. And he hadn't gotten that drunk either. He hadn't gotten real drunk at all. So, from that point on, my DM decided to have a no drinking policy whenever he has D&D sessions. That's not going to be a thing. We're not going to drink anymore when we're playing D&D. He put that in because of what that guy did. I don't know if they're still friends, but I sure as fuck ain't talking to him. Then I'm pretty glad that I'm not. So yeah, that was my one and only terrible D&D session. This is my only D&D horror story. Technically. There is one more. But it's a bit of a different thing. And I know I say, oh, it's a bit of a different thing. I say that a lot, but in this case, I mean it literally, genuinely, because I say that sometimes to, like, further my own thoughts. But in this particular scenario, it actually is very different, because it was, initially, when I played it, a horror session. A session that was about to turn into a D&D horror story, but then turned into a D&D glory story. It's very dark, and it's very sad, and it's very fucking harsh. But it was a very good session, and actually holds true as one of the best and worst sessions I have ever played of D&D. Not the one that I've currently talked to you about. This is something I'm probably going to make a video on in the future. But I want you guys to tell me if you want to hear about that as well, because that would be a very interesting story to tell you guys. I tried to make this video as short as I could, and I'm sorry that it didn't, because now it's literally 45 minutes, but I suppose these are the lengths that you guys have probably gotten used to at this point. Oh well, it's the quarantine hours, so no need to complain. Thank you all so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and share the video around as it helps me a lot. And this particular video couldn't have been possible without terrible, terrible social justice warriors who don't know when to quit. Or just right-wingers who are really bad at everything. One never knows. I don't get political in my games unless it is, in world politics. I don't get real in that sense, but because I don't see the need to. But in this particular scenario, it was just uncomfortable and just weird. So, I hope you guys enjoy, and if you want to subscribe to my channel, please go ahead and do so, share the video around, and I also have a Patreon. If you want to submit your dollars to me, you can do that right in the link in the description below. And for the patrons I do have, thank you guys for still supporting the channel. It does mean a lot that you guys still do. I'm going to actually revamp some of the tiers a little bit to make it a little bit different, so that it can be a little bit easier to manage, because thus far it has been a little bit hard. So I'm reworking that, so you guys are going to get some better shit in the future. But if you still want to do, you know where the link is. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.